but I don't.
No, absolutely. But you know, the help will come. It's just in boat time, and it won't happen tomorrow.
And if God forbid anything, what's the worst thing that can happen on a boat?
And I think that's what to me is the shock of boaty life. No, I just.
So what about you?
What? 5
months on the boat.
Yeah, I think that there's not. There's only one poo boat. Skip. And
well, let's get this older woman thing out the way first.
Okay. All right.
I am of pensionable age. It was a long story, and you know, there's always going to be a long story, but the short story is, and that's one of the things I've loved about being on the canal. You can step out your boat and...
Part 2 of Amanda's interview. Engine's running, charging the batteries. I haven't run the engine for about 5 days. We've had a bit of sun. However, the sun's gone down and I use more than I gain. However, Amanda's interview, first part, is about Amanda's life. What she did. Very interesting woman. And I think we'll all agree that, you know, she's worked. She's done some interesting stuff. And in the back half is more about boaty type stuff. So if you are interested in boating from an older person's perspective, whilst Amanda's very interesting, the back end of it could be useful, Jen. Well, there we go. So previous life, previous boating. What did you do? You gardening before or after you left what was your primary work?
I worked for humanitarian charities. I started in 1996 with volunteering for a small charity called Hope and Homes for Children, who now are quite big, and they were headed up by military people.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, it was in Sarajevo. A friend of mine and I went over to volunteer in the children's home in Sarajevo, 1996, just after the Dayton Accords were signed, which meant effectively that the war had ended, but obviously that doesn't happen. And from there, the only people I ever wanted to work for was Médecins Sans Frontières, and put in my papers after being in Sarajevo for 2 years, which I loved. Taught me so much about actually how fortunate we are, you know, in the way that I was brought up and, you know, the opportunities that I had.
And we take that for granted in this country.
So, yeah, I think, because you don't know anything else.
Not since World War II of the British public been in a fight.
Not really.
We haven't, have we?
No, not really.
We've had life very easily. Very easy.
Yeah. And life has changed exponentially because of it.
Yes, it has, yeah.
So I put in my papers to MSF in London, and they said, fine, when you finish in Sarajevo, we will put you on our pre-departure course, which was a week in Apeldoorn in Amsterdam.
Nice place, Apeldoorn. I've been there.
Yeah. John Denver. What? There's it at the youth hostel that we stayed in. John Denver is buried there, apparently.
Is he?
Yeah, and there's lots of people who come and... That's just an aside. Anyway, so we went on this pre-departure thing, and they put us through the ringer and, you know, figure out what we could do, what we couldn't do, etc., etc. And because I was already 40 by that time, they said that I didn't have to be a logistician or an administrator. I could be a project coordinator.
Right.
Which basically meant looking after the team and everything else around it, and which was probably a mistake. So I went from the wilds of winter in Sarajevo, which I have such fond memories about. And so I didn't work in the children's home all the time. I actually worked for the OSCE, the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, who were organising the elections, and I worked in what they called the Election Services division there. So 2 years in Sarajevo, came home, said hello to the family, got on a plane, and I was sent to the middle of South Sudan. And the only thing I could think of was, how many people get to see the middle of South Sudan?
Not many.
In the middle of a famine.
Oh, that must have been horrendous.
It was horrendous to see all these children and mothers and wounded soldiers and smell the fear. Now, I smelled some of the fear when I was in Sarajevo.
Yes, but then they didn't have the same geography as in South Sudan, in that lack of water.
Oh, yeah, and hot.
And yeah.
I mean, it was constantly 40 degrees.
Yeah.
But when you started talking to people, one, it's just incredible how many people speak English. Two, that they're wily.
Yeah. Well, they have to be, don't they?
What happened with the feeding centres, we had two sets of feeding centres. One, the therapeutic feeding centre, where mothers would have to stay with the children in a therapeutic feeding centre for however long it was. And then you had the supplementary feeding centres for the slightly older children who could go home and take the milk and stuff with them. So, and that's changed over years. That's changed. So that was 1998, 1999. So what happened was that we put bracelets on the mothers and the kids so that we could tell that they were actually their child.
All right, yeah.
But they knew how to take them off and put them on again, and you couldn't see how it was done. And it was amazing how many times you actually went, that's not your child. And how quickly it was that, you know, if you looked at the staff that came from Kenya and Uganda and Western Africa as well, their perception of it was, they're just winding everybody up. They're just doing the whole rounds about how many children they can get food for. And then, obviously, with the supplementary feeding, we gave the mothers a certain amount of food to take home with them. And then when they saw the babies the next time, the babies hadn't put on any weight or anything. And I asked somebody about this once, and they said, well, this porridge will make my husband much stronger.
So you give it to the men?
I'm not saying it happened all the time, but that was, if it was one reaction with the amount of people that we were serving, and it's like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But there's that whole layer of how to deal with people.
I've noticed the cultures. Culture trumps everything, and it doesn't matter what country you are in. Each country has its own culture, and for South Sudan, where men folk are rule,
yeah,
the women and the children have to live without, because that's the way it is, and to change that would take decades.
Oh yeah,
generations to change that.
Totally.
And that's where education comes in, isn't it? And how important it is to educate your own country, your people.
But if you don't send girls to school, you'll never be able to do that.
Yeah,
and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, there's a whole.
I get it.
There's a whole raft and layers, and I mean, with the first 2 weeks I was there, it was like I think I was in shock.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously I'd started that process in Sarajevo about seeing people in distress.
And then it's a different level.
And this is a different level.
Yeah.
With completely different things.
Yeah.
Famine, no water, 40 degrees every day, war going on, and but there were. I mean, but sometimes it was fun. Sometimes when some idiot would start singing you know, like some white person, some old white person would start singing as we were going around. The amount of people who joined in and were just like, I had to just shut up, because it was heartrending. It was just lovely.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's a Jean le Carré book, The Little Drummer Girl.
Yeah.
And it was a movie out in the early 80s, and she was singing Downtown. Downtown, and then she got all the locals to sing the same thing. So I can, whilst I've not been in a situation, I can picture that through movies, through thought processes. Oh yeah, that's yeah.
So it was definitely a baptism of fire.
Yeah.
So for MSF, I did South Sudan 3 times in different locations. I did Nigeria. That was an education.
Yeah. Because of people. Just lots of them.
Yeah. And down in the Delta, we were right down in Port Harcourt, a place called Bielsa. And it was just a delta. And we had 3 boats and 2 cars. And the boats went out to do primary healthcare, 56 islands or something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
And we did that 3 times a year, each one for 3 times a year. And I was there for 9/11. And so I didn't see any of that 9/11 stuff, because I was in my little hut doing whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
And the team were out, and they were out for a whole week. And suddenly my logistician came in, and he said, and nobody came near my room. It was like, I mean, you know me a bit. It was like, you know, don't tread over this line. And it's like, who's bloody knocking at my door? How dare they? And Johnny just went, have you been listening to the news? I said, no, it's not time for the news. He said, no, seriously, have you been listening to what's happened? And it was 9/11.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh my gosh. Because our people were actually down at a Texaco facility right in the far end of the Delta. And it's like, is that a target?
Yeah,
And so
the world changed.
it became a bit of a security issue.
Yeah.
So that was Nigeria. Where else did I went to Colombia. They love to sing, they love to dance, they love to kill people.
Gorgeous.
I loved Colombia.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's not a place I'd like to go to.
I loved it. There's a boater, actually, Camilo, who's usually down in London, and he's Colombian. And he said, you know, I'm from Colombia. I said, I know Colombia a little bit, you know. And he said, what do you mean you? He said, well, where were you? Cartagena or Bogota? I said, no, I was in Barranca. And he went, what, you have been to Barranca? And he cannot get over the fact that I went to live and work in sort of the oil-rich, FARC-infested, you know, on the banks of the Magdalena Medio in...
You even talk like the Spanish.
Yeah, but I couldn't speak Spanish.
All right.
I did 3 weeks Spanish... It's ridiculous, I know, you shouldn't say that. 3 weeks Spanish in Barcelona before I went. MSF paid, thank you. And then I had lessons at 6:30 in the morning, and then I'd start work at 7:30, whatever. So, you know, just to get, and...
just to brush you up.
Yeah, and we had 1 boat that went to do primary healthcare up on the Magdalena Medio. And invariably we couldn't go because of security reasons.
What amazes me is you're able to pick up languages later in life. And I can remember doing French, and I probably can pick up, well, next to nothing. Honestly. Où est la chatte?
Actually behind the couch.
Yeah.
One of my cats went behind the couch when Chris walked on the boat.
Yeah, but that's about it. Je m'appelle Christopher, and I can speak French in a Frenchy type accent dreadfully.
But it is amazing how you can actually make yourself understood. One can make oneself understood.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was MSF. Anyway, that was MSF. Then I went for a little break, and also in between the MSFs, because MSF don't particularly pay, or they didn't, because you were basically a volunteer
Yeah.
essentially. So at that time and all, etc., etc. I loved it. I loved being a project coordinator. You know, that whole interaction with children. Oh, I went to Liberia with MSF as well, down in Buchanan, on the south coast. That was a bit hairy. But again, I just loved it. I just thought, actually, I'm getting to know how to do this job properly. And one of the things about Liberia, let me tell you this, the teams went out practically every day to a different primary healthcare facility, and I loved to go with them because I would sit doing registration. I don't speak the language, right? So the local staff or the people that we employed that were from the local area would do all of that, and I just loved it because I would talk to people, and all these people are coming through, and my doctor turned around and said, "Would you please stop doing this?" And I said, "But I'm picking up so much intel here, it's unbelievable." Yeah. And they said, "Amanda, look, we can get through 250 patients if they are registered, if you get them registered quickly, and you are actually holding up the system."
So after that slap on the wrist, but good int.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
I would suggest that's something that CRT exec team should do more often.
Yeah, come and sit and talk to us.
Absolutely. And it's all right by saying, "Oh, I haven't got time, I'm stuck in the office." No, make time. If you are part of the exec team and you're stuck in the office and you feel you can't get out, you're doing it wrong.
But that's what I was doing. I mean, look, after MSF, I went to Save the Children.
Yeah.
And I was quite one of the senior emergency response personnel. And yes, I did go out and all of that sort of stuff to emergencies, but I would stand at my desk, and I got told off for swearing.
But it's made you the person that you are, and has that given you confidence to cope with boating life, to cope with the down times of boating life? When you're feeling low.
I think it has actually strengthened whatever I do. It's sort of like, one, I have to remember how privileged I am.
Yeah, I'm not in Sudan.
I'm not in South Sudan.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of a decent education, fabulous home life, the family get on. I've never, I said a whole load of stuff about being on the street. That,
I get it though. It goes in your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even if it's not reality, it goes in your mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I get it.
And also, in any of the positions that I've been in, I could turn around and say, "Thank you very much, I don't need this anymore. I'm going home." Wherever home might be.
Yeah.
That is the first thing that happens every morning, actually, is I wake up and go, "Oh, how privileged are you?" And I need to say that, because I need to remember.
That's interesting. Is that you take yourself back to your darker days. Well, no, they're not darker days, are they? Less privileged days of living in a society which is less privileged, and realise that even a damp, dull day on the boat where the fire doesn't light for whatever reason, or something's gone wrong. I'm not in South Sudan. I'm not in Sarajevo. We're not in war. Things can be sorted. It's just going to take a bit of time.
And I don't live there, which is damning, really, in its own way. But I don't.
No, absolutely. But the help will come. It's just in boat time, and it won't happen tomorrow.
And if God forbid anything happens, what's the worst thing that can happen on a boat?
Sink.
Yeah, exactly. I am trying every day to make that not happen.
And do you know what? I do that. I do my boaty chores every day so that I can see when something's going wrong.
Yeah.
I spoke to a fella down the road, and he was saying, you know, you were in the RAF. If you do your boaty chores, then it's like looking at an aircraft, and you're maintaining the aircraft by looking at it, by maintaining the boat, by looking at it, checking things out, so you can address the issues before they become a problem. And I think that's what, to me, is the shock of boaty life. And it gives me a sense of feeling, good feeling, because I know, well, okay, so there's nothing wrong with a boat, and everything's tickety-boo, but I have to do that daily.
And also, if I may say so, you're wiping down of the boat. You're getting to see who's around you.
Oh yeah.
That is you're clocking everything that happens.
Yeah.
Who's walking across that bridge?
Yeah.
Who's actually hasn't got the dog with them?
Yeah. Yeah, right. I haven't clocked that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I do.
You know.
And I talk to people on the table.
Yeah, exactly. You talk to everyone.
Yeah. It's part
and
of
I think that's also part of our culture about the work that both of us have done on completely different levels, is talk to everyone.
Yeah. For me, that's the intelligence plan of the battlefield, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're clocking footfall.
Yeah, exactly. How do I know?
You don't normally pass here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How do I know who's going to attack the compound if you don't know who's about?
Yeah. Crack. I never even picked that up myself. That's great. Thanks for that, Amanda.
No, because I've spent 3 years doing exactly the same. I don't do it as diligently as you do, but I will stand on the towpath doing nothing, you know, looking at the boat and going, hello, Madge. And then, oh, hi, how are you?
Yeah. I'll tell you what gets people talking to is when I do the brasses.
Yeah.
Wiping the boat down, yeah, whatever. Oh, you're doing your brasses. They look nice. Boat looks nice, all that sort of stuff. So, I need to do brasses more often.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No. It becomes a bit of an obsession.
Oh, no, I just...
So what about you?
What?
5 months on the boat.
Yeah.
What is your worst nightmare about the boat?
Boat sinking.
Well, there you go. You're already there.
Yeah. And it was from day one. And because I'm gaining confidence now that the boat actually is working the way it should be working. The electricity comes on when I want it to come on. We've got a bit of sun out today, so we might get a bit of solar.
Yeah, exactly.
But not a lot. And just to accept that this is boaty life. The pumps work, the electricity works. I'm fortunate enough to have lithium batteries, and I am mindful, though, of how much electricity I use and how much water I use.
If you lived in a house, you'd use much more.
Oh, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. How much water? Well, 500. When did I refuel? Asda.
Yep.
I haven't refueled yet.
With water?
With water.
No, I'm only a quarter in, and it's like I'm worried about going up to the next pound because I want to...
Cow roast.
Yeah, but I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go backwards to fill it up, even though sort of my water tank meter is there.
Yeah.
You know, and I've used about that much.
Yeah.
Do I go backwards to fill her up and then
go forwards?
Because I don't want to go to cow roast before a certain time in January.
Yeah, got it.
Because then I'd have to get a bus and then get a train into Watford and la la la.
Yeah.
And there's no laundry up that end, so I'd have to come back into Burco to do the laundry.
Right.
Because I don't have a washing machine. Do you have a washing machine?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the luxuries that I do is I get somebody else to wash and iron my bedding.
Which is fortunate you've got an understanding mum. So bedding, you mentioned, because you had the poo boat come round and
I did.
And unpoo you
out.
And pump you out. I think that there's only one poo boat, and he charges 20 quid a pump out.
Yep.
But there's a great opportunity there for other poo boats up and down the canals. I don't know how many poo boats there are on the canal system.
I know Warren only because it just serendipitously he passed.
What?
It's sort of serendipity. You know, just by luck.
Oh, right, okay.
He passed when I was panicking about where am I going to get my pump out done, because I've got a little gauge, again, those little lights that go on, and it was up to amber, and it'd been amber forever, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to go to red. And suddenly Poo Boat comes past. Please, can you do my pump out thing for me?
Yeah.
And he said yes, if you give me £20.
20 great British pounds.
Exactly. So I said yes. So this isn't the first time I've had Warren.
No.
But I have no idea how, and I'm no idea how many other Poo Boats there are.
And arguably, I don't know how expensive he is, because he has the monopoly of this part of this patch.
I had, when I was doing the Oxford Loop at the beginning of this year, I needed a pump out in the end of April. And my brother was on the boat with me, actually. And we stopped in Abingdon to the marina. We'd booked in, and I didn't even ask him how much it would cost. And that was when all the fuel was going sky high.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not filling up with fuel, but we'll do a pump out. And he charged me £35.
Wow. So Warren, I think his prices are on the reasonable side. He despite the fact,
and besides the fact that he's a lovely man, I like him.
Despite he's got the monopoly, he's not taking the mick.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And hats off to Warren and his Poo Boat and the service he provides.
Because it can't be that clean to actually clean out somebody else's Elsan, cassette toilet thing or
no, absolutely,
pump out tanks and obviously he then has to get rid of
the effluent.
And where does he do that? I'm not going to ask him. I might ask him.
There must be a septic point where he dumps it, and then that's then sucked up by a machine, by a wagon, that then takes it away. Yeah. But these things, I think there's great opportunity for CRT almost to invest in Poo Boats.
Yeah, give them a grant.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the ones that CRT, the pump out machines with those silly little cards,
always
invariably don't work because the card reader isn't working. And then the cards aren't that cheap.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, I can't remember exactly how much, but it's in my mind that those, and it's supposed to do 3. I think it was £15 a card, for example. You're supposed to do 3 pump outs, but you get 1, and it's a point system. You will use 13 points for this pump out, right? Well, 13 and 13 is what? 26. And if it's only a 25-point card, nobody really knows whether you can put another one in just to do the end bit. Ridiculous.
So yeah, Poo Boats. I think they're the way forward. And then that does Elsan, it does pump outs, and all you've got to worry about then is those of us that compost.
Yeah.
And I don't struggle with composting at all. I think composting's great.
If I had a bigger boat, or if I had a different configuration, I would, because obviously I've got the pump out, but I would definitely do pump out, composting.
Yeah, I like it. But there again, it's only me.
And again, it's only me.
So yes, I think that whole problem increases the more bottoms that sit on your toilet.
Yeah, and there are families that live on boats.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
But it's not like the cats. You can't just go outside.
No, I get it. Amanda, thanks very much for your time.
Oh, I love it.
We need to meet up next year sometime, and when I'm on my way down, or if you're coming up, I'll keep in touch.
Definitely.
Because it's been enjoyable going through the locks with somebody else. Whilst I don't mind doing locks.
You're not a dreadlock man.
I'm no Christian top bloke. It is a challenge doing it on your own by comparison to whizzing through. You prep the lock, you close them up, and all the rest of it. We have whizzed through what would take, I reckon, another 2 hours.
coding the locks.
Doing the locks by yourself. There's the difference of 5 or 6 locks, add 2 hours if you're doing it by yourself. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your friendship. And thanks for the bourbons.
That will continue.
Yeah.
The bourbons, I'm not so sure. Look.
One left.
No.
And
Sun
Amanda,
shining.
Sun shining. Thanks very much. Well, until next time.
Yeah.
Very interesting lady. I did enjoy my time immensely talking to Amanda. We used to talk of all sorts of stuff, and just great. Very, very knowledgeable in all sorts of life. And what I think was evident is her previous life has helped her in the boaty world. I think if you come from an environment which is very house orientated and you're very housey, the coldness of the boat, the dampness of a boat, yes, it's warm, or it can be warm, but it is a massive change to life in a house. I think we need to accept those challenges, and my hat goes off to those people with children. Of course, people say, oh, well, kids don't know any different, and that absolutely is true, but it must be a lot harder on a boat than it is in a house. Must be. Anyway, I'd like to talk to a family at some stage or other. Thanks for watching, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing. There'll be another one of these, not with Amanda, but with somebody else very shortly. But for now, until next week, ciao.